Welcome, Clyde Lewis listeners. Welcome, TalkStream Live. My name's Jimmy. It's Aftermath FM.
Ladies and gentlemen, live from the broken down, low-rent, sleazy, double greasy pirate radio Nut Hut Studios, it's time for the very first ever Southern...
Django to the Almighty. Standing by, over. Django to the Almighty. Standing by, over.
Right now, it's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines...
Clocks were now. Time's up. Wind is blowing cold and dark. On the road and no way out. Broken house, a smoking gun. On the run. On the run.
From the polio vaccine to heart transplants, but all past achievements may pale in comparison to the work of Dr. Alice Crippen. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
What's it all?
So, Dr. Crippen, give it to me in a nutshell.
Well, the premise is quite simple. Take something designed by nature and reprogram it to make it work for the body rather than against it.
You're talking about a virus.
Indeed, yes, in this case, the measles virus, which has been engineered at a genetic level to be helpful rather than harmful. And I find the best way to describe it is if you can imagine your body as a highway and you picture the virus as a very fast car being driven by a very bad man, imagine the damage that that car could cause. But then if you replace that man with a cop, the picture changes, and that's essentially what we've done.
How many people have you treated so far?
Well, we've had 10,009 clinical trials in humans so far.
And how many are cancer-free?
10,009.
So you have actually cured cancer?
Yes, yes. Yes, we have.
Since women stopped being able to have babies, what's left to hope for?
The world was stunned today by the death of Diego Ricardo, the youngest person on the planet. The youngest person on Earth was 18 years, 4 months, 20 days, 16 hours, and 8 minutes old.
The ultimate mystery. Why are women infertile? Some say it's genetic experiments, pollution. Why do you think we can't make babies anymore?
Doesn't matter. It's all over in 50 years. It's too late.
My name's Jimmy, and Into the Microcosm is on the air. we been at war and didn't know it, there are no bombed out buildings, there are no actual casualties that you could see with the naked eye. This Aftermath FM. Are we on the yellow brick road? The Belton Road? Is the Northwest Passage being melted by weather weapons? Is the Northwestern Heat Dome melting the ice? Journeyman. Hola!
I am here.
Excellent.
I'm trying to book some passage to one of these BRIC nations, maybe.
I know. Well, I hear there's plenty of employment to go around. Just raising the standard of living for billions of people across the planet. Hold on, I'm coming in hot on my iPad with listening with my Aftermath FM app. And welcome into the microcosm, ladies and gentlemen. That is the Epic Journeyman over there. We have Bruce MacDonald. It will be joining us at some point here. His power just went out right before the show, and that's okay because we have some background work to do here because we'd like to reawaken. Hey Eric, what's going on? We'd like to reawaken everybody. Remember back in the day, Epic, like one of the staple conspiracy theories was the North American Union. This was back when you couldn't say New World Order. Like if somebody said it, it was just like they said it and there was tape of it and there was, rumor that someone said it and it was just a rumor.
Yep.
Remember all that? The North American.
Then Lou Dobbs had to go and say it right out loud and hey, this could be the beginning of the Marrow.
Yeah, it's
people have been talking about the Marrow up until then, right?
Yeah.
This is currency for North and South America both.
But then, eventually it went away. And, it didn't become the focus. I mean, there's so many more other heinous situations going on. And do you remember when they were talking about how there was going to be a super highway? And it was only going to have exits at certain places. And so all the little towns, the gas stations, the mom and pops, all this, they would disappear because the new superhighway wouldn't have any way for you to get off the highway there, and so they would starve out everybody along either side of this new superhighway just to get rid of everybody. You know what I mean? To get them back out of there, get them back into the cities or whatever, this type of thing. Do you remember all this this theme that was there?
Oh, definitely, yeah, and how we're going to have to compete with the new Silk Road and China, and that the only way we compete against the BRIC nations basically was to do the same thing over here and basically use NAFTA, right, to make the superhighway, all the way down the tip of South America, all the way up here and across each way, and that was going to be it, right? That's how we were going to compete.
Yeah.
But why are we competing?
Well, here's the thing. Now, I'm just saying, we're just kind of laying the groundwork until Bruce gets here, because there's quite a bit here that we need to get through, get out on the table, just to get the people thinking about what is happening. Yeah, it was a toll road, Eric, for sure, in Texas. Now, it ran through Mexico, from Mexico, a giant port. I can't think of the name of the town right now. I've been to the town, and actually it's a really nice city that port is in. I can't think of the name of it now. But from there, China owns that port in Mexico. They revamped it. They put a bunch of money in it. Now this freeway, or this road, starts there at that port in Mexico, runs through America, through Texas, and straight up into Canada. And so this was going to be the high-speed truck route for the port, coming through. And I mean, something to keep in mind as we're moving through some of this information, ladies and gentlemen, is the future of trucking and the future of self-driving vehicles on roads that maybe there won't be any human-driven vehicles on these roads, because the only way that you can really protect yourself is to have all the cars on the roads be computer control. So maybe the idea will be in the future that these will be like solar-powered freight trains, 3-trailer semis with one trailer is nothing but battery, cranking down the road. You know what I mean? Epic.
Whole road's a meg lift, right? Basically.
Yeah. So, but the idea, the person who really was on the forefront of this, and the person that, shockingly enough, I'm sure for some, and painfully obvious for others, is that Ronald Reagan, here, let's do a quick little time warp here. Let's take a look at let's take a listen to this. Here we go. My name's Jimmy. It's in the microcosm. That's the Epic Journeyman. We're going to have Bruce MacDonald joining us momentarily.
We live on a continent whose 3 countries possess the assets to make it the strongest, most prosperous, and self-sufficient area on Earth. Within the borders of this North American continent are the food, resources, technology, and undeveloped territory which, properly managed, could dramatically improve the quality of life of all its inhabitants. It's no accident that this unmatched potential for progress and prosperity exists in 3 countries with such long-standing heritages of free government, and so a developing closeness among Canada, Mexico, and the United States. A North American accord would permit achievement of that potential in each country beyond that which I believe any of us, strong as we are, could accomplish in the presence or the absence, I should say, of such cooperation. In fact, the key to our own future security may lie in both Mexico and Canada becoming much stronger countries than they are today. No one can say at this point precisely what form future cooperation among our 3 countries will take. But if I am elected president, I would be willing to invite each of our neighbors to send a special representative to our government to sit in on high-level planning sessions with us as partners mutually concerned about the future of our continent. First, I would immediately seek the views and ideas of Canadian and Mexican leaders on this issue and work tirelessly with them to develop closer ties among our peoples. It's time we stop thinking of our nearest neighbors as foreigners. By developing methods of working closely together, we'll lay the foundations for future cooperation on a broader and more significant scale. We'll also put to rest any doubts of those cynical enough to believe that the United States would seek to dominate any relationship among our 3 countries, or foolish enough to think that the governments and peoples of Canada and Mexico would ever permit such a domination to occur. I, for one, am confident that we can show the world by example that the nations of North America are ready within the context of an unswerving commitment to freedom, to seek new forms of accommodation to meet a changing world. A developing closeness between the United States, Canada, and Mexico would serve notice on friend and foe alike that we were prepared for the long haul, looking outward again and confident of our future. That together we're going to create jobs, to generate new fortunes of wealth for many, and provide a legacy for the children of each of our countries. 200 years ago, we taught the world that a new form of government created out of the genius of man to fit with his circumstances
That's right, man. I can feel that warm sun down in Mexico.
Way down here, you need
South to Mouth FM, worldwide, on the internet, TalkStream Live. Epic Journeyman. When you hear James Taylor, like you hear James Taylor sing about Mexico, do you go to Mexico in your mind?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
I know.
I think kind of pina colada, kicking back, margarita. Yeah.
I know. Well, the thing is, it used to be you could just go down there and everything was all right. No problem. You just, especially if your person lives down San Diego. I mean, going down to Ensenada or Rosarito Beach. Yeah. So, the Rosarito Beach Hotel back in the day. I mean, you go there now, and it's all built up. There's gas stations everywhere, this and that. But back in the day, you could go down there and literally rent horses and just ride horses all day on the beach for literally like $10. But, a lot of people down south are on their way here because they figure, well, there's something going on here, But, I say if there's people that still believe in that American dream, well, let them have the American dream. And, the North American Union seems like it's something that's going on. And when Bruce gets here, he can testify to some of the stuff that's going on in Canada because, Canada is deeply, there's something called China-da. Have you ever heard of it? China-da. It's like the cooperation between China and Canada. It's China-da. It's kind of
I have not. I was looking at the Belt Road Initiative thing, but it's kind of excluded Canada generally.
Well, take a look. Well, it isn't. Well, actually, here, let me grab up some stuff here because I have a whole bunch of stuff here that we can bring to the table. Let me see here. Let me see if this here. Yeah, so here it is. China is paving its Belton Road to British Columbia. A major warehouse facility under construction in Surrey is not just paving the way for more trade between British Columbia and China. It could be helping pave the Chinese President Xi Jinping's Belton Road initiative to Canada. The massive 470,000 square foot complex dubbed the World Commodity Trade Center is a joint venture between Chinese state-sponsored company and a local development firm. The center, first conceived in Beijing, has 4 warehouses, 2 large exhibition halls to be lined with Chinese-Canadian flags strategically located at the Campbell Heights Industrial Zone between Vancouver International Airport and the United States border. So there you have it. So the Belt and Road is in Canada. So now, you were talking a little bit before the show, and I want to talk a little bit about this because there's been some unusual temperature spikes going on up in the Northwest Passage, hasn't there, recently? Temperatures have been reaching, just...
In the far north, yeah.
So
unusual for this time of year.
And so the thing is we've seen an unusual heat dome, or like some, 1,000-year heat dome. I forget what they were saying. There's some, giant number of how many years since the last anything. This is like the Dust Bowl, only 10 times worse, or whatever, heat dome, which is how they were, painting it or whatever. But I'm just saying...
There might be something to that painting it,
I know, exactly. Because, here's the thing. Now, if you focused it right exactly on the Northwest Passage, that would be a little bit too obvious, wouldn't it? Because, Russia was interested in doing the same thing now, weren't they?
They sure are, yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's Northeast Passage over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And going over and then hitting over across to Norway and, GI-UK Gap and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And over here, it's how you get all the way from Nova Scotia to Alaska, straight across the Arctic Sea.
So there's a question about who owns the territory, isn't there? And so, go ahead. I want you to break that down a little bit. And there's also, did Russia plant a flag via a submarine? Also, that's another question. Go ahead.
they might have, but the thing about it is, back up until 15th, 16th century, you could still go on the Northwest Passage. It wasn't completely frozen. So some of the old explorers back in the day made it way inland, into North America that way. But then it froze over in the mini ice age, they call it. And so it's been frozen for years. It wasn't until like early 1900s, 1895, and then in 1906, I think Amundsen made it across. But and it's been frozen pretty much ever since, right up until recently. And so it became a big thing. Like, well, how can we map this out and make a good, a trade route? I mean, eventually that stuff's going to maybe melt. And I got to explore it back in my submarine days. We mapped it with a pedometer, went through it submerged, almost the whole way. There's a spot that's really shallow on the far east side we weren't able to get through. But everywhere else got to go see and not literally get to map it with the pedometer. But now you can see. Now it's all the way across. I mean, there's times of the year, months out of the year now, where it's completely thawed. And the Canadians want to charge to basically keep it open, right? Like we do with the Panama Canal, or used to with the Panama Canal. It shaves thousands of miles off the trip to Asia. So it's a huge economic, boon for them if they pull this off. And so there might be some deals going on with China there because it benefits both, right? And ironically, Nova Scotia and Vancouver, that latitude, that's exactly the area that this heat dome is in. And, the problem has always been that the ice sheets break off. And even when it's mostly navigable, there's still problems with the potential of damaging your ship going through, so the floating sea ice. But if we could just somehow get rid of that sea ice long enough to make it totally clear for a while, we could keep it clear, right? Pretty interesting when you think about the fact that all those ionospheric heaters are being developed by all these other nations, in particular China, right? So, and we've had them for years. That's what HARP is, right? It's an ionospheric heater. But they're all over the world. Norway, right? ISCAT. And the ones that are deployed at sea, this is where it gets important, right? The ones that are deployed at sea, nobody thinks about or knows about unless you know what it is. And, they're just floating wherever they need to take them. So next time it's 118 degrees in Seattle, it might be worth looking a couple miles down the road.
Checking to see who's out there on the maritime radars. Yes. Now, is the maritime? Now, can you look just like you can with airplanes? Can you? Is there a website for seeing what ships are at sea, where they are, where they're located, this type of thing?
There is for some of them actually, if they're participating, right? It behooves both people, the people that are sending trade across the ocean and want to keep an eye on their product, right? And the potential rescue people have to go find them later on if they need to. But it's not like the airplanes where there's not a transponder in every ship. So You can't do it that way. You'd have to find them with the radar or sonar.
Well,
in the case of this ionospheric heater situation with like the X-band radar and these other things like that, they could be 1,000 miles away and bounce off the ionosphere, right? And deploy it, bouncing off the atmosphere in such a way to hit these different zones. So they don't have to be really that nearby. It's just like how HAARP used to do it. They
So you
manipulate the atmosphere all over.
It's a more portable, localized sort of use of the same kind of giant HAARP project. Now these are smaller units that float around out in the sea on top of container ships, just flat deck ships with these...
Basically, yeah. And they have a big dome on them.
White domes. Yeah. And some of them I've seen, they look exactly like oil drilling platforms, except they have the white dome on top. So it's like a geodesic dome with some sort of white reflective material on it. So, I mean, this can cause the unnatural heating of the ionosphere. And so now, is this a reflective sort of operation? So you could say you're over here, you beam up, and then it bounces off and comes back down, kind of like a ricochet. So like like taking a magnifying glass, for example, like on ants, and just
right. You can use the atmosphere to your advantage, right? So you can heat one section, right, to make it thinner, basically, right, or to raise the canopy. If you imagine the canopy of the atmosphere around the Earth, it just kind of raises this portion like a bubble, like almost like blowing a bubble, right? And then the inrush of the lower atmosphere into that zone that's been heated, draws in the air that way, right? So that's how you can manipulate weather. But you can also do it in such a way that you use it just like communications, radio communications, where you can actually basically have the equivalent of a sound channel. Would a sound channel be in the ocean, or using bottom bounce for sonar, the same kind of thing bouncing off the atmosphere. So these with radio, it's not really called convergence zones, but it's similar. And that's the idea. You can hit a certain convergence zone, especially coming from different directions, and focusing on that one spot. That's not my area of expertise, but it's the kind of thing that is a known quantity, right? So and the people who do radio all the time know a good deal about it, even if they're not working with ionospheric heaters, because it's the same premise, right? Of how you can use it to your advantage to get longer ranges and to radiate a certain zone.
Well, it's interesting. Now, some really big happened in America on 15th of July, 2021. And it has to do with what we're talking about tonight, because I don't want the idea of a North American Union to be outside what the listeners over at Aftermath FM and on TalkStream Live. I want the information to be fresh in your mind. With what we're talking about is the North American Union. What we're talking about is an Amero, some sort of a digital currency that works for the whole continent here and beyond, into Canada and down into Mexico and down into down on the boot down there, going further and further. On the boot down there, going further and further. It looks like these 10 regions that may or may not exist as far as the FEMA regions in America. So how much of I want to bring this up now here. The Allied Joint Force Command declares full operational capability. So NATO has taken over a military base in America, and they are now in full operational capability. Now, are you aware of this, Epic Journeyman? The Allied Joint Force Command.
Yeah, I am actually. It's the first new one working with NATO since World War II, basically. And what's significant about that is that it's basically a wartime footing. I mean, that is like the very thing that Eisenhower and MacArthur, ran back in the day. It's the same kind of organization, right? So the Allies are working together as if they're on a wartime footing, planning something for that area that they're in control of. Is there something going on? I don't know. Or there's preparing? I don't know. But it's interesting that they started a new one. Why? Because as far as I know, there's no major conflict going on that we know of. But maybe there is.
So it says its mission is to protect the strategic lines of communication across all domains, protect sea lanes between Europe and between Europe and North America and enable reinforcement of Europe. So the opening ceremony was held aboard a USS Kearsarge. And so anyways, the point is, ladies and gentlemen, is here, this is going on here on American soil. And so I want to point you to, and have you remember, if you will, the Strong Cities Network. The United Nations operation started during the Obama administration. It's called the Strong Cities Network. Strong Cities Network. Do you remember this, Epic Journeyman, the Strong Cities Network?
Yeah, I remember hearing about it, but I didn't ever hear what the plan was with them.
Well, do me a favor. Do me a favor.
It was grab 10 governors, right? The 10 governors that yeah.
Well, do me a favor. Grab the Wikipedia on it, and while you do that, I'm gonna get people into this Belt and Road Initiative. Now, ladies and gentlemen, have you heard about it? It's a giant road that's being built around the world for trade and distribution of goods, and throughout everywhere that we talk about. All China is the one that's leading the way on it, and the United States has been invited 3 times to join in and get involved and make investment, and there's something like $17 trillion worth of investment going into the new Silk Road. It's called the Belt and Road Project. Now, there was a bunch of conspiracy theories a few years back about these ghost cities and all this, about why they were building these ghost cities. Well, the thing is that the way that it used to work is you'd have a city, you'd have a road first, and then cities would develop off that road. So, for example, you're going across the United States, you beat a trail across the United States on horseback, and then along the way people stop and, start to open up a, country store. Somebody opens up a saloon, and then there's a town. But see, the way they did it over there was because they have this modular construction method, and the way they did it was they went ahead and they built the cities before the road, because the actual road building is only minuscule in comparison to building cities. So building the cities ahead of time is the reason that you saw those ghost cities. So what they do is they are anticipating massive amounts of people working on this road and working on this project around the world to lift up the standard of living for people who are living without really any real money or any participation in the taxation system that goes on in the world. So with the advent of Elon Musk's Starlink, and having the ability to have internet service no matter where you are on the face of the earth, these new workers on these road projects, these Belt and Road projects sponsored by the BRIC nations, they're going to have cell phones in their hands, okay? All the cell phones that you throw away that are no good, you turn them in, guess what? Boom! They refurbish that shit and send it over to other countries, and people are happy to have them. And they're over there working off 3G or whatever they're working off of over there. They're all going to have cell phones in their hand, and they're all going to have the ability to move money off that cell phone into businesses and, pay rents and this and that and the other thing. And so they're, anticipating that these workers are going to need places to live, and there's going to need to be support personnel to work at the restaurants and service all the stores and all this. And so these cities are ready to go pretty much. Now, there's controversy about the status of these buildings, whether or not they've stayed intact and if they're still in good shape, and did they build good cities, and what's the construction methods, and Chinese construction is no good and all this. Doesn't matter. Point is I'm just trying to lay out what the plan is. So it says the belt, in short, is the Silk Road economic belt, referring to the proposed overland routes for a road and rail transportation through landlocked Central Asia along the frame historical trade routes of the western regions, whereas the road, in short, for the 21st century maritime Silk Road, referring to the Indo-Pacific sea routes through Asia, South Asia, Middle East, and Africa. Example of the Belt and Road Initiative infrastructure investments include ports, skyscrapers, railroads, roads, airports, dams, and railroad tunnels. The initiative was incorporated into the Constitution in China in 2017. The Chinese government calls the initiative a bid to enhance regional connectivity and embrace a brighter future. The project has a target completion date of 2049, which will coincide with the centennial anniversary of the People's Republic of China founding. So, Epic Journeyman, are you there?
I am. I'm reading about these Strong Cities Network things, and I'm tripping out a little bit.
Okay, let's go back now. Okay, so we're coming back to America, back to the North American Union. Back to
America.
Yeah, and back to the north. We have the NATO Allied Joint Force Command in Norfolk declared full operational capability. So what I was referencing was I want to call your attention, ladies and gentlemen, to the Strong Cities Network. Now, Epic Journeyman, what about that Strong Cities Network, bro?
Well, this is pretty cool. I'm reading the Justice Department memo about it, and it started on September 29th, 2015. And the idea is to have these cities all over the world, start with 25 cities and subnational entities from different regions, to provide them a strategic direction. And the idea is to fight extremism. Now, I ask you, if you're just putting 25 random cities around the world to fight extremism, what the hell good is that? I mean, who's coordinating all this? Who's behind it? You know what I mean? Who's actually in charge? Well, they have this steering committee. They will include an international steering committee, approximately 25 cities. That's what I'm starting to read here. It's where I'm at now. And they start this organization, the Institute of Strategic Dialogue. It's a think and do tank with a long-standing track record of working to prevent violent extremism. They bring up violent extremism in the first couple paragraphs at least a half dozen times, never saying where this is coming from, this violent extremism, and where in the world is going to be focused at. But here you have people from Oslo, you have people from Montreal, Canada, you have people. I mean, it's obviously China. We're talking about Prince Saeed Al Hussein, Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York City. Interesting. But it doesn't seem to be tied into the smart cities. Like we all know about the smart cities with Glasgow and San Diego and all these other cities. They were starting to go on the smart city path, right? That's not really what these are. Are these ghost cities? It doesn't say. It's actually a pretty short press release, and it's got me interested because where'd it go? Now, I do believe it ties into those 10 regional governors, and I bet you will find more about that the more that I look into this, because that is the plan, is to have these regional governors. That is a UN agenda thing, and this is a UN-sponsored Smart Cities Network. So,
yeah, and that ties
interesting. Strong Cities Network.
Right, and that ties into the 10 regions, right? And that ties into FEMA being in control of the United States of America. Because
extremism from where?
Because all 50 states declared a state of emergency during the pandemic, which have never been undeclared. And so when that happens, there's a trigger that causes FEMA to take control of the country. And you remember when we did shows about that, when the presidential seal disappeared, and they had the guy, what was his nuts, that was over there. There was these Congress people that were bussed out to a FEMA center, and I can't remember. I think it was Iowa or someplace over there. I can't remember exactly where it was. I don't know if you remember that, but hey, so listen, so you got the Strong Cities Network, right? So now one level, I want to point people to this real quick, because I don't want to forget about this, because these are fusion centers. Now this is one step under this is the nuts and bolts of what's under the Strong Cities Network. In other words, if it was a pyramidal structure, so this part, the fusion center part, is the part that lays up under the Strong Cities Network. So what I'm saying to you is this fusion center apparatus is tied in directly with your emergency management services, your police, your fire, Okay, and they take and use information provided to them from the lettered agencies such as Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the NSA, these type of people, if there's alerts, and it's built around the thought of terrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a listen to this here.
Via Danish, bring it to your table. I mean, this is, I'm overwhelmed by the attendance here today, and I know that our co-hosts are as well. So many of you have traveled from some distances. I think this is the most number of outside of Washington, D.C. people we've ever had in one room at CSIS. So we're actually thrilled to have everyone here. And we're very thrilled, obviously, to have to Bart Johnson here, and I'll talk more about him in a second. But everyone prior to coming to Washington, D.C., where he served as a colonel with the New York State Police and has more than 31 years of law enforcement experience, 24 of them with the New York State Police. And it's that background that is so critical to this Washington, D.C. environment to ensure that what happens at the federal government is value added to the state and local. Obviously, given the long experience in Mr. Johnson's background information sharing, he's, appropriately positioned to speak on this. So, Bart, again, I'll turn it over to you. Give a warm round of applause, and thank you once again for coming.
Okay, this is the Center for Strategic International Studies.
I want to really thank Rick for that very kind tee-up and introduction. I concur with what Rick just said as it relates to the need for the National Network of Fusion Center, particularly as it relates to Homeland Security. And what I'll try to do over the next 30 minutes or so is try to illustrate some of the highlights, some of the progress that has been made in partnership with a lot of you out there. I would also like to echo his thanks to the organizers of this event. I'm not going to try to repeat them for the sake of brevity, but I really appreciate it to really stand up.
The stroking.
This forum here today, I think is very timely and very relevant to really what's going on in the country right now. There's a great assemblage of our state, local, and tribal partners here, some private sector folks, and all of us are members of the public. It's interesting that the department, for the first time, discussing the mutual benefits of the national network, some of those thoughts with you, and I would challenge each. I just want to throw out some statistics to you. There was recently a report issued by the New York State Intelligence Center. That's the one that I participated in and hopefully helped build a little bit, examining the last 32 major terrorism cases since 9/11. And what that report illustrated was that 50 of the 88 individuals involved in those plots were U.S. citizens at the time of their arrests, and the majority of them were born within the United States. And to highlight another report, the Congressional Research Service report made some striking comparisons that between May of 2009 and November of 2010, there were 22 homegrown plots that were carried out by American citizens or legal permanent residents.
Do you see a theme developing here, Epic Journeyman? So mine's Jimmy.
I sure do. I'm reading all their modules. I'm on their website right now. They're up to 120 cities. And they have these training modules and libraries and things to access. Got the Dalai Lama on the front page, trying to make you feel good about us, It's all good, bro.
Yeah, it's all good, bro. Don't worry about a thing, man. Don't you worry about a thing. Because everything's going to be all right. Because, hey, man, the New World Order's got your back. And, do you find it interesting that Kazakhstan...
Kazakhstan's a big part of it, yeah.
Is right there at the steps, at the steps, and every single kind of when you think about the building of Kazakhstan, and you think about the pyramid there, and you think about the Space Needle type structure.
Spaceport, they got a spaceport there, yeah.
Yeah, you think about the pentagram you can see from the sky. And you think about how the city was built to track the stars and the sun. It was built with the idea of the future in mind. It's clearly a big, giant place that doesn't seem to have that many people in it. for how big it is. I mean, it does have the big structures like you saw in old-time Russia, the older construction type thing. You see different architecture from around the world is present there, and there's kind of a feeling of this sort of universal belief system. So everybody gets to, you know, if you're a Muslim, there's a place for you there, and you know, I mean, it's a new world futuristic city right on the Belt and Road Project, Epic Journeyman.
You know, there's this indoctrination process they have for the Strong Cities thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to read part of this in the modules, because as part of their membership, Strong Cities are given access to a series of training modules on CBE tools that can be used at the municipal level. Training modules are made up of a series of lessons containing video content and multiple choice questions. Lessons are intended to provide practical steps for cities on how to use these tools effectively in their communities. Now, I'm just going to go over some of these modules. Module 1, education. Well, of course, it's our education center here. Module 2, polarization. This was worth reading. This training module aims to inform practitioners about polarization and its wider implications in the sphere of violent extremism. Intended as an introduction, the module also covers hate crime, hate speech, and dangerous speech. Dangerous speech, of course, right? It aims to provide a nuanced understanding of polarization, its development, and different components. Module 3, local risk assessment. Start to see a theme here. Module 4, youth engagement and participation. Hey, teach the youngins, right? Got to get the youngins on board. Module 5, intervention and de-radicalization. Well, how are you going to de-radicalize them, I wonder? Module 6, counter narratives. Wow, where we heard that one before. Interesting, right? And it has this little thing. Hey, become a strong city. We can sign up, and you know, for the mayor, and go ahead and try to get on board here. The fact that most people, I didn't even know about this the way we're not like this, right? Aren't aware of this. I mean, this is absolutely a brainwashing regime here, totally.
Dude, this apparatus that was set up during the Obama administration for so-called terrorists is now going to be turned back around. And Valerie Jarrett is a big part of the Strong Cities Network. Go ahead and type in Valerie Jarrett and Strong Cities Network. Okay, listen, Pearl Jam just played up at Obama's birthday party up at his mansion. Okay, man, how's your day going, man? How much your bread cost? Hey, Pearl Jam, what's up, man? Give me a break, man. Give me a break. Take a look at that. And, hey, in the meantime, we're jumping back and forth. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, take a listen to this.
To connect China to the world.
我们的共同目标是携手努力让各国互联互通更加有效。
The most expensive infrastructure project in history.
The Belt and Road Initiative, a boom, a bust, or just a buzzword?
It is also a way through which China confirms its role as a global power.
The U.S. and other Western countries are worried and recently announced their own plan.
We think that there's a much more equitable way to provide for the needs of countries around the world.
So what exactly is the BRI? What's in it for China? And why do some countries see a big economic opportunity while others see a threat?
Is your office chair giving you back pain?
Aftermath FM, Mom's Jimmy. It's into the microcosm. Hey, Strong Cities Network, Fusion Centers, the Belt and Road, the North American Union, the Amero. It's in the microcosm.
And drink from the water now.
both a massive trade route and a political vision. It started with a speech that President Xi Jinping made back in Kazakhstan in 2013. He talked about building a new trade route based on the old Silk Road, an ancient network that linked Asia, the Middle East, and Europe for almost 2,000 years.
It started out in 2013 as an idea to invest in infrastructure from China through Central Asia to Europe and Africa. But over the years, it has become something much larger.
It's an absolutely colossal project, which is scheduled to involve 60% of the world population.
The Belt and Road Initiative basically weaves together lots of projects. It could be China building things from scratch, upgrading existing infrastructure, handing out loans, or making investments. There are overland routes that connect China to Central and South Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. That's the Belt. It includes what's called the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, where around $60 billion are being spent on things like coal and hydro power plants, wind farms, highways, and a new high-speed rail link between Peshawar and Karachi. Then there's the road part, which is slightly confusing because it actually refers to a maritime Silk Road, sea routes that connect China to Southeast Asia, Africa, and Europe. It includes major investments in ports across the world, places like Sri Lanka, Dubai, Djibouti, Greece, and Spain, even as far as Peru.
There are a lot of different initiatives, and the Belt and Road has become more of a label to capture a lot of what is going on.
Now,
what you're seeing here are China's Belt and Road ports around the globe. At first glance, these look like ordinary commercial ports meant to bolster trade. But if you take a closer look, there's a lot more to these port projects than meets the eye.
There's a lot.
In pursuing the Belt and Road Initiative, we will not resort to outdated geopolitical maneuvering. What we hope to create is a big family of harmonious coexistence.
Since announcing the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, more than 7 years ago, China has repeatedly insisted that the initiative is for peaceful purposes only. Beijing's gone to great lengths to downplay any geostrategic motives and generally has kept its military, the People's Liberation Army, or the PLA, out of the picture to dispel any concerns about a China threat. Even China's one overseas military base in Djibouti on the Horn of Africa is officially described as a logistics support facility.
Logistics support facility. Epic Journeyman, are you there? What about these support facility, Valerie Jarrett? Did you find any information there on Valerie Jarrett?
I got rerouted. I got rerouted on my way. I found some interesting things about the Strong Cities Network. I did.
Well, let us have it, man. Let us have it.
So it turns out that most of these cities that are in part of the Strong Cities Network are all hubs for big shootings, you know, I mean, some of the mass shootings we've had, and some of these big terrorist attacks, right? I mean, it's pretty coincidental. I mean, it is, you know, I mean, even going to Montgomery County, which is right there in Washington, D.C. I mean, so you got Aurora, you know, San Diego, the shooters from San Diego, the Aurora shooter. You got, you know, Denver, you got Pittsburgh, you got New York City, of course. You got, I mean, it's like it starts adding up. You're like, hey, wait a minute here, man. You know, now you could say it's just because they had their big cities, well, except for Montgomery. What about that? You know, but that was the DC snipers, right? Yeah, there's a theme here. I'm on the trail. I think I'm going to look a little more into this.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get to continue with the looking up the original line of inquiry here.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because these networks exist in the United Nations now. Now Biden is friendly with the United Nations, isn't he? I mean, he's somebody that, you know, he appreciates the the idea of the United Nations, and he supports a lot of what the United Nations supports, doesn't he?
He does. He does.
I wouldn't be surprised if you saw an Obama head of the United Nations at some point during the Biden administration. I mean, I think that would be.
I think that's going to happen. Actually, I think that's quite likely.
You know, you might want to say that, you know, hey man, that's checkmate.
And everybody knows that the plague is coming. Everybody knows that it's moving fast. Everybody knows that the naked man and woman are just a shining artifact of the past. Everybody knows the scene is dead, but there's gonna be a meter on your bed that will disclose what everybody knows.
So, you know, I think everybody around the world knows there's something wrong in America, but I think, you know, like we talked about over a year ago, that America is censored from the world. There's a system that looks just like the one that's in China, and that maybe we're in quarantine here in America as far as having any idea what the hell's going on anywhere. But I want to ask you, Epic Journeyman, do you remember Star Trek? Now, the original Star Trek. There was an episode where they beamed down. I can't think of the name of the episode. I was looking for it because I wanted to try to get this clip out of there, because there's a place where they have a war, and this war is ongoing. But what
they simulate all the deaths and just report to the disintegrator.
Yeah, you report to the disintegrator, exactly.
Yeah.
So like they don't destroy each other's countries. They just say that X amount of people died, and that in this mock attack that we did, X amount of people died. So X amount of people got to show up down at the disintegrators. And so that's the thing. You can have everything in this world, that you're living on this world and get to have everything, but when your number comes up for the incinerator, you got to cruise on down there and walk into the disintegrator, don't you? And if you don't, that'll cause a real war, won't it?
Right. So I feel a sense of moral obligation to look out for their brothers and keep everybody else from having to suffer real damages by doing their civic duty, which is exactly what the Strong Cities Network modules is telling you to do, basically. I mean,
not only that, but it's also, if there's an invisible war going on, we were at war and we didn't know it, and we got hit with something, okay? And there's an end result of being hit with whatever that was. X amount of people have now been a casualty of that. And now to the victor goes the spoils, right? So the thing is that if the supply line stops, in other words, if you farm out your sustainable resources that are produced for your people to another country, and that country becomes your enemy, then what if they just say, hey, Bob, I'm going to quit sending that horse out to the middle of nowhere with the bags of supplies to my little store. I'm just going to close that store. So we're closing all of our operations here in America, ladies and gentlemen. China, what if they decided to close their operations here now? Don't they own chicken production? Don't they own pork? I mean, the thing is what if they just decide, we need it for our people, so we really can't sell it here in America anymore. We're going to just take it back to where we, back to China. What about that, Epic German?
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious that we produce the stuff here, send it over there, it gets processed over there, and they send it back to us. And yet this is a country that we're technically at war with, I mean, for all practical purposes, since Korea, right? The Korean War never ended, I mean, the only thing that kept that from being a nuclear conflict is, cooler heads prevailed, right? And so, that's one thing that's always bothered me. Why are we dealing with a country that, to this day, technically, we're not peaceful partners with? We don't have a treaty with them. You know what I mean? Not like that. And they were going to do that with the TPP, but I'm glad they didn't do TPP, honestly, but still, yeah, there's a lot of things about this that don't make any sense. All it's doing is driving us to the bottom economically because the labor gets farmed out to China, the parts go to China, the food goes to China, it comes back. It's all crap to us by the time we get it back. You know what I mean?
Well, and a lot of people in America, I mean, if you don't have any reason to know about this, then you really wouldn't know about it. But there's something that's called just in time. And this is where you don't warehouse you don't have any of your product warehoused anywhere. You don't keep stuff in the warehouse to make stuff. You have stuff arrives exactly on time when you need it. You build it and send it out the door. So you never have money sitting around in a warehouse. It's all fluid action. It's all dependent on everything doing what it's supposed to do when it's supposed to do it. So just imagine ping pong balls, arriving at certain places at certain times. And these ping pong balls all come together at the end to make, whatever they make. And so the thing is, if one ping pong ball is missing, everything's jammed up. And so the way that everything's been set up is there's worldwide distribution of goods that's mainly coming out of China. Mostly things are manufactured in China. And so everything's coming out of there. So, all you have takes is one thing missing. Now look at all those trucks sitting down in the South. Sitting
the
there.
F-150s, I guess it is, right? They don't have a chip, so they can't finish the truck.
F-150. Yeah, so, I mean, literally, how long can you leave a car laying there before stuff's just, I mean, literally, when you're not driving it, you're not doing anything to it. I mean, mice get in there, you know what I mean, chew the wires. I mean, are those trucks going to be any good anymore? I don't know. But, I mean, the year's gone by, so what are they going to do? It's going to be like, what's next year's model? You know what I mean? Oh, wait a minute. No next year model. Guess what? No next year model because no V8s. V8s are out. 4 cylinders only. And we'll phase out those 6 and 8 cylinders, your cash per clunker program, to get rid of all those gas guzzling V8s, those trucks, all that stuff. Gotta go. Gotta go. Because, hey, man, it's chewing up the resources. It's spewing, smoke in the air. It's got to go. 4 cylinders or electric, or ride your bike or get on public transit. You get on these trains, you get on these buses, get on these self-driving taxis, these Uber-like vehicles that, are working off of these systems, smart city network, tied into the fusion centers, tied into the Strong City Network, tied into North American Command, tied into the North American Union, tied into the worldwide union of all the countries of the world. One country, one world, one people, one goal.
Start singing It's a Small World pretty quick here.
It's a small world after all. And, it's more like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It's Monday through Friday, 10:30 Pacific, right here immediately following Clyde Lewis and the Ground Zero crew. It's into the microcosm, and we are happy to be here, and we're super stoked, and thanks everybody. Clyde, another ripping show tonight. And I'm going to take a 420 break. I need to give myself a foot massage. Mom's Jimmy. It's Aftermath FM. Sticky Fingers. How to Fly is the name of that. And hopefully I got this figured out, whatever's wrong. So, yeah. So there we are. We're still talking about it. Epic Journeyman now is boned out to the perimeter. He's going to go water the centipedes out on his property. Now listen, a friend of mine turned me on to this song today, and I played a little bit of it on the way in, but we're going to replay it right now because I'm in love with this song. Here we go. Aftermath FM. That just made me forget about everything. That's a lab. L period, A period, B period, in the air. It's Aftermath FM. Yeah, it'd be nice to have a life that sounded like that. You know what I mean? It's like everywhere you went, that music was just playing. You're just walking down the street. I bet you would trudge the road to happy destiny with that music. Epic Journeyman, have you returned from the perimeter?
I returned from the perimeter, and yeah, I've been far and wide throughout these strong city networks still. You know, Mexico's oddly missing from that, as is most of South America other than Argentina. That's pretty interesting. in Kenya and Bosnia-Herzegovina, said that wrong, have the most of anybody.
Did you say Richard Gazinia? His friends call him Dick.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting, you know. I can see it. I mean, Kosovo too, but one of the first cities was Oslo, and you're talking about the extremism, right? And they had the Oslo shooter, and so I'm staying with that shooting theme. Obviously,
Dude,
a lot
I
of these
swear
things.
to God, I think we accidentally stumbled onto something here, like sometimes happens on the show. But I
swear, man, for real.
No, seriously. I mean, I think you've accidentally. So you better put your bulletproof. Wear that flak jacket.
Wear the best again, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, listen. I'm going to throw the keys over to you for a second. I need to go check the perimeter myself. So why don't you jump in here with a little bit on this, on what you're seeing here, as far as the Strong Cities Network, and maybe what do you think about this now? Because this ties in now. Is there any tie-in to the Belt and Road project as far as some of the cities along the way on the Belt and Road? I don't know if you've had time to check that out.
I was actually going to back up and go look at the global map, which is the page back behind you. I'll look into that because that actually does. There's a when you look at the way they're going to build the trade routes. Hold on a second. I'm going to go there right now.
Yeah. So just go back that thing up, man.
Yeah.
And I think they actually used that song, that Juvenile song. I think they actually used that for a new vaccination song. It's Vax That Thing Up. But no, seriously, I'm not even kidding. But the thing is, while you're looking at that, I'm gonna tell you what, I'm not gonna play the parody version of it. All right, we're just gonna back that thing up, okay? You know what I'm saying? Juvenile, remember that one? That was MTV, man.
Right on.
Cash Money Records taking
It's Aftermath FM.
This back game, make it wanna spend his cash, yeah. His last year, girls found with a cash, yeah. In that, yeah, you could ride in the jag, yeah. With that, yeah, you could smoke a fire bag, yeah. A grass, yeah, got money like a flash, yeah. And trash, yeah, I'm a bitch, I'm a player, yeah. Gun spray, yeah. A player, hit a flipper, yeah. Grey Billy, yeah. Like I be slinging wood, yeah. I'm out the hood, yeah. Let it be understood, yeah. It's all good, yeah. Gotta get give me law, yeah. On the hard, yeah. You a school here, broad, yeah. Want to draw, yeah. Hope you can do a trick, yeah. On the stick, yeah. You claiming you wanna bitch, yeah. They ain't it, yeah. I'm the daddy with the money, yeah. Don't make money, yeah. Got birds that are running, yeah. About 100, yeah. Girl, you look good, want to back that thing up. You a big fine woman, want to back that thing up. I'm a big daddy with the back that thing up. Girl, who is you playing with? Back that thing up. Girl, you look good, want to back that thing up. You a big fine woman, want to back that thing up. I'm a big daddy with the back that thing up. Girl, who is you playing with? Back that thing up. Girl, you look good, want to back that thing up. You a big fine woman, want to back that thing up. You gotta put it back, yeah. Make me laugh, yeah. Make them play, wanna grab, yeah. Autograph, yeah. I'm sweating in the jaw, yeah. All long, yeah. Wanna walk it like a dog, yeah. Break you off, yeah. Get money on the church, yeah. That for sure, yeah. You're messing with my nerves, yeah. To the curb, yeah. I know you women know, yeah. On the show, yeah. But the jewelry got some more, yeah. About to flow, yeah.
Oh my God, Becky, look at her butt. It is so big. She looks like one of those rap guys' girlfriends, but, who understands those rap guys? They only talk to her because she looks like a total prostitute, okay? I mean, her butt is just so big. I can't believe it's just so round. It's like out there. I mean, gross. Look. She's just so black.
I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. And when a girl walks in with an itty bitty waist and a round thing in your face, you get sprung. Wanna pull up tough, cause you notice that butt was stuffed. Deep in the jeans she's wearing. I'm hooked and I can't stop staring. Oh baby, I wanna get whipped up and take your picture. My homeboys tried to warn me, but that butt you got makes me so horny. Ooh, rumpa smooth skin. You say you wanna get in my bins? Well, use me, cause you ain't that average groupie. I seen her dancing, to hell with romancing. She's sweat, wet, got it going like a turbo vet. I'm tired of magazines, sand flat butts all the thing. Take the average black man and ask him that. She gotta pack much back, so fellas, money on the floor. Oh, pick it up, girl. Pick it up, girl. Drop it low like it's money on the floor. Oh, pick it up, girl. Pick it up, girl. Drop it low like it's money on the floor. All that sexy dancing, the hair in the dress is so romantic. It's so sexual. Wiggle that body, girl, let it go. It's got me intoxicated like drugs. It's got me faded. The visual is amazing. 3D digital entertainment. The women are beautiful here, and they come from everywhere. From all over the world, come here. You see the most beautiful girls. They make you clap, throw that back, bend over and show that crack. That booty is so damn fat. How you make it go like that? I said, hey, little mama, what's the deal? Talk to me, girl, I'ma keep it real. I've been on you since you walked through the door. That drop it low like it's money on the floor, like it's money on the floor. Oh. Then drop it low like it's money on the floor. Oh. Yeah, yeah. Then drop it low like it's money on the floor. Oh. Pick it up, girl. Pick it up, girl. Drop it low like it's money on the floor. Oh. Pick it up, girl. Pick it up, girl. Drop it low like it's money on the floor. She a flirt. She look like pet milk come out when she squirt. She don't believe in wearing panties under her skirt. No bra under her shirt. I like the way she twerk. This your one right here, baby. This your motivation. Make your cheeks applause like a standing ovation. Got my dick hard like incarceration. Let me buy you a drink. Intoxication. Hello. Ain't nothing square about this hustler here, man. Give a chick a Chinese name. One gone. Play head games. What you want, boy? Get a real with in your rap. It's knocking on my girl. They call me Earl. I rap and I rhyme, but I used to sell that swear.
They call him Earl. He used to sell that squirrel. Mine's Jimmy's Aftermath FM. Sorry, I went off with the music. You know, it happens sometimes because, you know, it is Aftermath FM, and, you know, we can play music here. So enjoy it, because it won't be in the podcast, that's for sure. But enjoy it live, and that's what we do here, Aftermath FM, live every night, Monday through Friday, 10:30 Pacific, immediately following Clyde Lewis and the Ground Zero crew. You never know what's going to happen here tonight. And while I was playing that music, I was giving Epic Journeyman a few moments. I'm sorry, I happened to look at that video I was just playing. It's not, you can't hear the music anymore, but the video is still playing, and yeah. So anyhow, hey Mitzi, what's going on? Hey Johnny's List, what's happening? What's going on, Chad, over in the chat room over there? Got a bunch of people over there. There's like 30 people in the chat room on our channel there. But Epic Journeyman, I need you to jump in here on the perimeter. I mean, I'm going to check the perimeter. But in the meantime, what have you dug up on the Strong Cities Network in relation to the Belton Road? Is there anything there?
There is, actually. So the ones that don't go through China, which is interesting, but all the other countries that are involved, right, they do have strong cities going through there, going through India, going up through the east coast of Africa on those trade routes. The only thing that's conspicuously missing is China itself, in Mongolia and Russia, right? So it's interesting that the core nations, Russia and China and Brazil, right, basically, are pretty much free, but yet the path itself is, right there, going all the way through around India, through the Suez Canal, up into Europe, into the old Yugoslavia region, into Italy, and up into Europe that way, across the east coast of Africa. That is one of the routes. So the three routes leaving China and Russia proper do have a network of strong cities, literally, along that path. So there is something there, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Well, you know, there is something there, and there always is. So now we've shown this hierarchy, right? So we see NATO, or North American Treaty Organization, the North American Treaty Organization. We see the old conspiracy theory, the North American Union. We see the idea of the Amero being a digital currency, similar to the euro, only called the Amero. Now, this seems like a distinct possibility, leaning more towards probability, in the sense that you see Canada leading the way in a lot of these extreme measures as a result of the current health degradation that's going on with a lot of humans on the earth. So China is I guess now under a lockdown. I understand. There's some lockdown type situation going on, which may mean another sort of disruption. But also at the same time as the disruption, there's a worldwide container shortage for shipping of goods. So there seems to be a perfect storm. And then when you see, when you think about how these conspiracy theories over the years and all these different things, when you see a North American Union come up and then you see a Canadian Prime Minister basically, taking a knee and throwing, out all these measures around Canada, and that being a commonwealth of the crown. Okay, now you see across the crowns down in Australia, you see also extreme measures going on. So the only one, here in America is we're trying to get along, to go along, and this and that. But I'm saying that the extreme measures are starting in Canada, and maybe they're just going to come on, like a little wave over the border there. Maybe the borders are going to disappear. I mean, not in the sense that you won't be harassed when you're going from one place to another, or taken aside or whatever it is, for whatever reason. There seems to be a problem at the border going in this way or that way. If you're American, you got issues going over to Canada, but if you're coming up from the south, there are no issues simply because there's a $7 trillion infrastructure bill on the table, and there needs to be people to bust that hump, okay? Tote that bell, lift that barge, like the first original people that came here, the immigrants, the Irish, the Italians, the Chinese, the people that built and did all the, the rails, all this. They were immigrants who came here to do that. Okay, so the thing is there needs to be more immigrants. Okay, because they need to do this infrastructure. They need to restructure a lot of what we got going on. There's construction going on here, so that's what we need to do, right? So maybe
cheap construction, yeah, because what they're going to do is they're going to take the third world peoples and bring them over here and everywhere else, right, to do all the infrastructure construction,
right?
Because they work for cheap, but it brings them up in the process. So instead of making 25 cents a day, they can start making $25 a day, right? Yeah. And that's the thing that this whole economic calculation's been made, that continuous growth is impossible. That eventually continuous growth leads to a stagnation, that there's just no way to perpetuate. So the only way to make that happen is basically to work from the other direction over. So make them grow, right? So the people who are already on the down, so to speak, Africa is a huge country with a lot of people in it that would love to have some work over here making bridges, for example. And this Belt Road Initiative, the thing about it is that they're talking about it representing 40% of the world's economy, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing for everybody. It's a good thing for a lot of people, but not necessarily for people who are already doing well, right? So I think that's the other side of the coin here. So you have this adversarial relationship with the United States, potentially Canada. I think they're going to get involved personally. It looks like they're in on it to me. Honestly, they're gonna flip, you know what I mean, go their direction, I think. But us in Mexico and some of South America, but Brazil's in on it. They're one of the leading nations on there. So I don't know. There's a big patch when you look at the smart cities grid.
Something happened to you. He disappeared. Epic Journeyman, you're gone.
I got hit with the Chinese RF. Yeah,
China!
It came in and got me. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like China makes a lot better products than they did a while back. I mean, like they're getting better and better all the time, which is not to our benefit as a country to have to potentially wage war with them at some point in the future. But one of the things that's interesting is the reason that all our goods we made over there are starving for cheap labor is to destroy their environment, right? They look at it like we're forcing them to they're wising up, right? We're poisoning their land, letting them get all the pollution and stuff, and then ship it back to us, and then we get the benefits, right? I mean, so it builds animosity on both sides. We get all the poison and stuff, get the lead paint and lead in our food and all the junk that's in everything they send back to us food wise, but in the process, I mean, even the pharmaceuticals they make. I mean, there's all kinds of contaminants in them, right? So coal slag and all that stuff, right?
This has been this is the silent weapon for quiet wars right here. Is that, listen, man, you slowly poisoning somebody, a little bit at a time until they go completely and utterly insane. I mean, look at this country, dude. I mean, listen, remember the sheetrock? Remember the poisonous sheetrock that came over here? Remember the dog food where the people's dogs were dying?
Right. That's the coal slag I was talking about. Yeah, I forget the other name for that, but yeah, that's what that is. It's basically coal slag, right? It infected all the food and the paint and the dog food and pet food and the pharmaceuticals. It was in everything, because they have all this coal-fired. Well, supposedly they have all this coal-fired electrical plants, right? And it pollutes the water and it gets in everything. Or does it? Or they just have a little bit of extra of that junk around and decide to send it back to us.
Look, this whole thing, China's real rise to prominence has happened since 9/11. So, and Nixon was instrumental in, starting it off. And
he was proud of that too. We went over there in 72. I think it was 72.
Yeah, and if you look back at that documentary about Walmart and what they did and how they started something called, they started something called a push system as opposed to a pull system. So it used to be like, you're a company and you're selling your good thing for $10. And then Walmart goes, give me 10 of those. Okay? But they started doing this thing where instead of that, they started doing a thing called push, where they'd say, hey, I see your $10 thing over there, and here's the thing. I'll carry it in my stores, and you're going to sell a lot of them. Okay, Epic? You're going to sell a lot of your thing. Okay? But listen, I'm not going to pay $10 for your thing. I'll pay you $6 for your thing. So they started, instead of you telling them how much your product costs, they turned it around on people and started telling you how much they were going to pay for it. So it doesn't matter how much you want to charge, it's how much I'm going to pay for it. And since I'm so big, and so you make more money in volume instead of per item. And so that started that changed everything, and it's changed to the point now where I'm hearing a tale of literal advertisers saying that you pay them to advertise on your thing, and then they'll pay you commission on anything that gets sold during the advertising on your thing, whatever that is. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in my life, but it's getting done. So, I mean, the world's topsy-turvy. Listen, and, things used to be done in a certain way. Now, I saw a particular colorful chart of the world. It was a map of the world, and it was divided into two colors, blue and sort of this salmon color that represented China, and blue represented the United States. And so it showed the trade coming out of each country in the year 2001. And at that time, all the countries of the world were blue, and only a few of them were salmon colored because China was only trading with a few countries at that time. But now it's cut to 2021, and the entire world is salmon colored, except for America and a little bit of blue in Canada. But Canada used to be a big supporter of American goods. And so, but it seems that most of the world is buying everything from China at this point, Epic Journeyman. And so that would explain the BRIC organization. Now, the BRIC organization, now did this form specifically around this Belt and Road Initiative? Because this is, this is a big part of what's going on, because this BRIC initiative seems to be based, there'll be some sort of a currency around this BRIC group, and it's going to be based in gold, silver, and something looking like a digital currency. Now, what about the BRIC organization, or, I guess you would call it, is it a corporation, or is it just a group of nations?
It's a group of nations. It's kind of like, not quite the UN, right? It's almost like OPEC, right? A financial agreement between nations. And so original members were Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And since then, South Africa's joined, which kind of cracks me up. I guess the prawn work for cheap down there, right? District 9, But
well, it's easy. It's easy to see. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's just I'm been looking a lot at the Walton family over the years, and it's one of those things that has always bothered me, because it's been such a long psychological operation in the truest sense, right? I mean, the Waltons are Walmart, right? I mean, the Sam Walton wasn't Walston, it was Walton, right? And so here he had this television show, but it spawned out of a movie. I think wasn't it Kirk Douglas, The Big Trees, basically was financed by the same people. Basically, they produced, I have to look into that. It was basically based on some of their stuff. Then they had the store, down in old rural South, right? And then, but it becomes this giant conglomerate. But it wasn't done overnight. It's because they promoted themselves to family. Good night, John Boy. Good night, Grandpa. All that stuff, right? For years and years and years, it was the number one television show in America. So it wasn't just it was a two-pronged attack, right? It wasn't just a business deal that kept getting better and better, making better deals, right? It was also an attack on our psyche to get us accustomed to the wholesome nature of Walmart, only for them to totally turn on us, right, and sell us out quite literally to China.
Yeah, and everything becomes a husk of what it used to be. In other words, man, you're buying something that's got the name on it. It says the same name that you're used to, because you've been branded like branded, okay? Levi's used to be, you've been branded by Levi's because they used to take two mules and try to pull them apart, and you couldn't, because they were so strong. They were stitched so good. The stitching was so good. The cotton was so good. The quality was so good. They had two mules try to pull them apart. They couldn't do it. They couldn't rip them. Because now you go down to the store, it says Levi's on it, but it's not the Levi's that you used to remember. Not that it even matters. I'm just saying, Levi's is an example of something. So everything is like a cheap cutout of what it used to be. It's like it's hollowed out. The substance has been hollowed out. It looks like it's supposed to. It smells like it's supposed to. It tastes a little funny. It's not. It doesn't quite taste.
The right texture, barely, right?
Yeah, it doesn't quite taste like it used to. I mean, how many times have you sat down and ate a piece of fruit and go, man, this doesn't taste like the strawberries. I mean, it looks nice. It's a nice strawberry. It's fluffy, okay? But it doesn't taste like a strawberry. Or the watermelon. It don't taste like watermelon. It looks like watermelon. It smells like watermelon. It doesn't have seeds in it. Huh. Well, how could a species perpetuate itself without seeds? So, is this a natural occurring watermelon that just happens to exist in nature without seeds? Just grows out of nowhere? What does it materialize out of thin air? Like, hey, there was no watermelon there yesterday, but now there's one. Look at it. Look at it grow without seeds. What a miracle.
It's a modern miracle.
It's a miracle. Well, hey, it's midnight, 12:06 on the West Coast, Santa Cruz Mountains. Yeah, I am local to Watsonville, and Watsonville's a great town. You know, when you go to Watsonville, the groceries are cheaper and the meat packages are giant, and compared to over here in Santa Cruz where it doesn't look that good. But you go to Watsonville, man, you go down there, them stores, I'm telling you right now, it's the deals are better for some reason. I don't know why. But when I used to have my boat down in Moss Landing, I used to go buy all my food in Watsonville, and I'd buy other stuff, all my my vegetables and everything right off the fruit stands down on the coast, right here on the central coast where everything grows and, you know, in abundance or whatever, because there's so much fog and moisture. You know, it's great. But, tell you what, we're going to open up the phones. It looks like Bruce's power is still out. So we'll hold off on some of what we're going to talk about until we can get a hold of Bruce. Maybe we'll bring him in tomorrow for a part 2, and we'll add Steve Pecoinen from Slow News Day because he'll be here tomorrow for WTF Wednesday. So maybe what we'll do is we'll open up these phoners. These phones at 626-999-4761, and let's do that. 626-999-4761. You know, you can probably grow those. You can probably grow those watermelons at your own house. And that's the thing too. Is like you used to only get them at a certain time of the year. What's up, 816? How you doing? Who are you? Where you calling from?
It's your boy. Who's your daddy?
Hey,
Doing well. How are you?
Hey, who's your daddy? What's happening, man? It's good to see you. Good to hear you. So yeah, man.
It's great to reminisce about Watsonville.
What's
Love
that?
town.
Yeah, Watsonville's a good town, man. You know, it's right there. It's next to the marine sanctuary. So there's sloughs running up in there. So like if you like to, you know, paddleboard or you like to ride around in a kayak, you can paddle around out there. There's plenty of crane, birds to see. There's an otter out there. You know, it's a nice town, man. You know, and there's some good restaurants there. You know, they got a cool old downtown, still intact from back in the day. You know, it's always been, you know, from there up, keep going south from there. It's where the, you know, a lot of everything's grown, you know. So, hey, why don't you hang on the line? I'm going to play a tune here for a second. It's Aftermath FM. It's Into the Microcosm. We're here every night, Monday through Friday, 10:30 Pacific, immediately following Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero. So this is the place to be. And so stay on the line there. Who's your daddy? Epic Journeyman. Get ready to step in here because I'm going to need to go check the perimeter. But I'm going to give you time to check the perimeter while I play this song. And say,
okay.
And say 626-999-4761. This is for all the hermanos down in Watsonville. Orderly Holmes.
En la estación pasa un transeúnte chiflando una canción, se prende un cigarrillo, esperando un tren, con la mano en el bolsillo. Parado en el andén, con la cara
It's out of control.
Perimeter's clear.
Perimeter's clear. Great, man. So yeah, so come on in. Now, who's your daddy? Now, have you heard what we've been saying, man? Have you heard about this now? Now, you're out there in that, in Texas, aren't you? A lot of times. So now, are you familiar with this super highway initiative that was put together? And while you're talking about that, if you are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Who's your daddy? You're muted up if you're talking, because we don't hear.
Sorry about that. I hit a dead zone. I just got back into reception.
No problem. So I was asking. So in your driving in the big state of Texas, are you familiar with this super highway idea? Now, have you been on this highway, or any pieces of this highway that have you seen that just didn't continue, but it stopped someplace? But I mean, it's coming out of Mexico. There's a lot of trucks coming out of Mexico, out of that port, that have the ability to ride into the United States of America, do they not?
I think it's called Camino Colombiana or something like that. I've been right up to it near Laredo. And it's an extension of I-35, pretty much. It runs all the way up to, like, I want to say, I can't remember the name of the town in Minnesota, but I-35 is the aorta of Central America. Or, the central U.S. And so it makes sense that it basically junctions right there in Laredo, Texas. And I, thankfully, have not been down that road because I don't want to spend time in Mexico, personally.
You don't? You don't like it down there?
It's a dangerous place for gringos, man.
Well, I mean, I guess it could.
My family, we ain't got money for ransom, bro.
Yeah, I guess it could be. I mean, I guess things. It
depends where you are. Yeah, like I wouldn't be hanging out in the Gallus, but some of these other places aren't bad.
And that's the thing too.
Yeah, those border towns are really rough.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is, wherever you go, there you are. So you know what I mean? So like, I'm the type of person, like, if I go down to Mexico, I'm not worried somebody's gonna get me, somebody's gonna kill me, or somebody's gonna fuck with me. Cause I mean, I respect people. I respect people's shit. I respect their country. I mind my own business just like I do in America. So I mean, when I go someplace else, when I go down to Mexico, I don't even think about somebody messing with me. I mean, not that they don't, or not that people haven't been messed with, or not that there isn't gangs, but I'm not buying blow, man. Okay, and I'm not down there to buy a pound of blow, and I'm not there with anybody who's doing anything weird. So I don't really have any reason to come in contact with anybody. But if I did, I mean, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, it doesn't matter where you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just thinking statistically, that's cartel territory. It's a bad space to walk.
I've been in Baja California a lot, different places down there. And, Baja California, I know it's not, but I mean, Baja California's got some cool places, and I've been all around Baja California. What about you, Epic Journey? In Baja California, you been there quite a bit? He must have stepped off. Epic Journey.
No, I didn't step off. I just had to, my window doesn't minimize right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've been down there. Baja's nice. Baja's safe. I've been there a bunch, actually.
Yeah.
Me and Sammy Hagar hang out down there.
There you go.
Actually, I hang out at Sammy's place.
What's his nuts? Down there. What's his face? The dude who was governor, Jesse Ventura. What do you do?
Oh, right.
Down
He's
to
down
Mexico.
there too,
yeah. So I mean,
there's a Minnesota connection right there. That's Minnesota, yeah.
Well, that's trippy, but yeah, seriously though, it'd be nice to be able to go back and forth, but the problem is that there's, people don't. The thing is too. The other thing is, like, lots of people think that like Mexico is just a bunch of dirt and a bunch of people living in corrugated tin shacks and paper boxes or whatever.
Oh no, Mexico City has a lot of wealth in it. Man.
No shit.
Monterey. I tell you what, the sister city to my current locality, San Antonio, Monterey, is incredibly beautiful.
I know.
But it's also a place you don't want to be at after dark if you don't know what the neighborhoods you're in.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mexico City is one of the most populated places on earth. you know, and that's no joke. But at the same time, you know, the thing is that when, for example, when I lived in Colorado, outside of Aspen, there was a lot of tourism coming into Aspen, you know, to go skiing and, you know, go in the hot springs and all this. And there's plenty of middle and upper class families coming from Mexico on vacation up here. You know what I mean? It's not, I mean, everybody coming over the border is not you know, tattoos on their neck, you know.
MS-13, right.
That's what I mean, man. But that's the way it's made to seem, because that's, you know, an inflammatory picture to paint. And I'm not taking away from anybody who's had issues with anybody. It's like everybody isn't, you know, held responsible for the actions of one asshole. You know, you don't hold everybody that is, you know, of a certain nature or a certain, you know, you don't hold everybody responsible for the actions of one asshole, man. So, I mean, or thousands of assholes or whatever. There's
unless that asshole
millions
is
of
Walmart.
assholes.
If the asshole's Walmart, you can hold him responsible.
Well, yeah, you know, but you know, there's you know what you understand what I'm saying. So, anyways, the point is like, where are all these people going to come from to build the new infrastructure in America? So, if you want the infrastructure, so on the one hand, you want the infrastructure, but on the other hand, you don't have the people to support building it. Because like I keep saying, you know, and I've said it for so long. When I first started saying it, the average age was 45, but now the average age is 50. Construction workers, because you know, hey, the younger generations, they don't get into construction because they don't think there's any money in it. They want to be managers, and you know, project managers or whatever. And they don't want to, you know, they want to sit back and go get business degrees or whatever. They don't want to, you know, they don't want to get their hands dirty or whatever. But somebody has to do it. And I'm not saying these are jobs that, you know how they always say, well, they only take the jobs that nobody wants or whatever. No, it's not true. It's not the jobs that nobody wants. And if you're not going to be willing to, you know, do what you got to do, and other people are, then there's companies that are going to spring up, man. And those companies are going to get bigger because there's people hiring those companies. A lot of those companies are Mexican dudes coming from Mexico. They came here, they got their status. They started companies.
Yeah, in the Philippines too.
Same thing. So the thing is like I said earlier, the first round of everything that was built now is everybody's living on the sweat equity of your granddaddy, your great granddaddy right now. All this shit that's been built was all sweat equity on somebody else's back, and most of those people are about to die. And most of the young people have no sweat equity in what exists right now, so they don't really give a shit about if it falls down or it gets torn down, because they wasn't the one that had to build it. So the thing is, if you don't got guys with hammers and shovels, dude, how are you gonna build anything? Who wants to?
We really need guys with chainsaws in their hands. Where's all the lumber coming from right now?
See, did you know that 1 acre of hemp supplies the same amount of paper as 4 acres of trees, and that 1 acre can be replenished in 90 days?
Oh, I'm well aware of the hemp trade. We finally got hemp farming legalized in Texas, and I'm very excited about
You should go.
prospects of
You
our
should go lease yourself.
future with that.
You should go lease yourself some land and start growing some hemp, dude. Because you know you can make alcohol out of hemp, and you know you could run
It's
your.
one of the coolest things out there, man. And I ain't making a joke about, ha-ha pun, but it's far better for the environment than, say, stripping a forest of pines or what have you.
It's dude, it is crazy.
I mean, just in general, the lumber and other building materials shortage is outrageous right now.
Do you know how long it
And
takes for a
it's
tree?
halting so many houses from being built.
It's crazy how long it takes for a tree to grow. And I mean, you could have been as long as you've been alive. There could have been a tree sitting there, and it's been big since you've been alive. But you didn't sit there and watch it grow from a little tree. So I used to tell you, man, I'm sitting here. I lived in the redwoods. I lived in the canopy, down in the trees for a decade. Okay, I saw redwoods. I saw, they drop out of, the little seeds drop down and they grow. and you see how long it takes one to grow. I mean, after 3-4 years, it's only, a couple feet tall. And to think I'm sitting there under a tree that's 80 feet tall, how long it took for that tree to grow, and all the other ones around it, and the giant oaks and all this shit that, they just come up and cut it down just to do what? Make paper or make furniture or whatever. Okay, back in the day, I could see it, on some level, because you got to start somewhere. You show up, there's some trees, you need a house, you got to, you got to do what you got to do. But, at the level that it starts becoming everybody needs wood, then the trees start to disappear, man. And then, then the breakdown starts to slowly happen piece by piece after that, right? So what was there wasn't there, that's missing. Because that's missing, this happens, and the dominoes start to fall. So taking out trees, I think, it's not a good idea. And using hemp for a lot of the things that we use trees for is definitely possible.
Maybe we need to start a business somehow to create a wood equivalent with hemp pulp.
There already is, man. They got like there's something called hempcrete, where it's like concrete, but it's sort of mixed with hemp, and it's way stronger. It's and then there's ways you can do that. You know what they do? They take these balloons, all right? So it's like this balloon. You fill it up with air, and then you come up with this hempcrete. Looks, it's like concrete. You come up with this thing, and you spray that bubble, that giant balloon. You spray that shit with hempcrete, okay? And then you sit there and you let it dry, and then you let the air out of the big rubber bubble thing, and you got this dome that's sitting there. You don't have to do squat, man. I'm telling you, fill up.
Like Luke Skywalker's house, yep.
You fill up this bladder, it blows up to a certain height, and then you just spray it with hempcrete, and you got yourself a dome, man.
That sounds like something that could be a really eco-friendly geodesic dome design. That's brilliant.
Totally. And the other thing is that living in areas where there's hurricanes and all this, you don't want to build square houses, man.
No, you don't.
Every place, dude,
material, yeah.
Every place that you see death and destruction in these square houses, if they were dome shaped, most of what happens to them wouldn't happen. I mean, if a tree falls on it, but you got this Kevlar shit that they have, that they put over the top of stadiums. There's no trees are coming through that, man. It'd have to be going, 300 miles. At the point that a tree was flying through the side of your dome with Kevlar, the end of the world has arrived, and you might as well just kiss your ass goodbye at that point. But it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? So
complete metal deflection at that point, yeah.
Yeah, but the point is that wind blows around these domes, man. It's just it's a no-brainer, and I think for some reason, I wonder why they just never took off. They tried to get them going in the 70s, man, 60s, late 60s. They tried to get people going to the dome, but people just didn't want to go to the dome. I wonder why. There must be
There's
something.
no money in it. I guess it's not as aesthetically pleasing as well. I got to have a little picket fence. Screw that. I wanted a fishing hole.
Well, to think if you put that dome up on some sort of a platform style up off the ground, so that even if it came flooding in there, you'd be squared away, man, still.
There are examples of that on the coast. There was a guy, I think in Florida, who could have been Corpus Christi, but he had a reinforced steel concrete dome. It was on an elevated platform, and he weathered a Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane, no issues. He was reporting live during the storm.
He was standing at the window. He looked like he was on the bridge in that show, Lost in Space.
Right. Jupiter 5.
Just standing at the window as everything's just blowing by. The witch from
And your little dog, too.
Yeah. It's in the microcosm. We're talking about Well, now we're talking about a whole bunch of other stuff, but we were talking about the Belt and Road, and we were talking about China, but now we're talking about ways for you to find yourself out of the system and start yourself a hemp business. Get in the business of growing yourself some hemp. You know, and so I think we're only a moment away from them totally making, they're decriminalizing cannabis across America because they see the potential for all that tax money. And they're really salivating at the possibilities, man. What do you guys think about that?
It's a two-front win-win. Ever since I was a kid, I've been on board with the idea because it frees up so much of our judicial system, correction system, not to mention the tax revenue. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I can't believe it's taken this long for the country to start making that turn. But, of course, the bigger the ship, the harder it is to steer. Right, Epic?
Yep, absolutely. I know that for sure. You know, the thing that's tripping me out is the CBDs as well. I mean, everybody's got this problem with inflammation and, you know, rheumatoid arthritis and gout and all this other stuff. And here's this product that grows naturally out of the ground right there that solves half that problem right there, right? I mean, yeah, it's something that should be out commonplace everywhere. And it's starting to get that way. But it's just amazing that all these pharmaceuticals have been there this time, making us so things to make us better from the sickness-causing pills that they give us, right? When it, you know, never had to be there in the first place.
Jimmy Jean, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't it cotton farmers in the South that sort of put the kibosh on hemp here in the States?
I'm not real sure. I'm not sure who put the. What do you know? Epic.
It was Hearst. William Randolph Hearst put the nix on that, and it's because he had just spent millions on paper mills, and they found out that hemp made better paper faster, just like we were talking about earlier. It could be, you know, every 90 days replenished basically, and 4 times as efficient. And so that became a campaign. He actually hired a supposed FBI agent, but is more of a writer, so a hired gun, no pun intended, to actually go out and write all these articles about the wickedness of cannabis, and made it, you know, this terrible drug of the. It was really racist too. To try to paint it all as it was like the brothers are going to come take your white women. You know, basically it's reaper madness. All those things came out, but it was a series of articles that he wrote. That Hearst wrote that really put the kibosh on it. I want to say it was 1932, somewhere around there. I have to look it up.
Sorry to interrupt. Sounds like I need to find his grave so I can see faces. Maybe take a leak on it, you know.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was not a good person, man. He killed somebody on his yacht off San Diego. Rumor has it, allegedly, right? Just dumped him over the side. And then there's that whole thing. We don't know what happened with his daughter, but I mean, there seems to be a generational thing with that family, right? Not that she was a bad person necessarily. She was brainwashed, supposedly, but there's some weird things there. There's some weird connections. It's one of those families I'd like to do a show on someday, because I know there's a lot there. I know some about him in the family, but I'd like to know a little more, you know, going all the way even to his mansion, right?
Yeah, the Symbionese Liberation Army. Hey, here's Pat Travers. It's into the microcosm. It's 12:30. We got 30 minutes left. 626-999-4761. 626-999-4761. Optimouth FM. 626 999 4761. 626 999 4761. It's Pat Travers. The Pat Travers Band. Six two six 999-4761. 626-999-4761.
She touches you there, you just wanna shout. She said you knew how to do it, yes. Thought that I'd give it a try. Just another reason to party all night if you gotta have a reason why. A few dozen lines on a mirror, that really set off the bass. Oh, I'm charged up like the 85 runner, but I wanna do win the race. I wanna do win the race. Doing some sounds, she started dancing, spinning around and round. Open up a bottle at the call CC, then we really started getting down. And I'm go all night if you can't treat me right. And she said, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I can. Don't doubt it. 'Cause I can. She said that you could take me to heaven, but there was evil in her eyes. Well, I was feeling kind of evil myself, so I didn't want to criticize. I floated across the floor, kind of smiling. There was magic in the air. She said that she could conjure up the devil himself, but I told her just to leave him there. I told her just to leave him there. I looked back and later, she was flying, and there was mist just everywhere. I knew it was a key for me to soldier up quick and to get the hell away from there. But I go all night if you can't treat me right. But none of that black magic stuff for me, honey. Well, I wonder what I'm doing here. How does she do those things? Well, I felt so close, so really near, but now she's flying without wings. Oh, flying around.
Pat Travers. So this is this is Rory Gallagher. 626-999-4761. 626-999-4761. Tomorrow night, Steve McCoy and Slow News Day. Tonight we got Who's Your Daddy's on the line. Give us a call. You want to say hello to Who's Your Daddy? Epic Journeyman's here. I'm going to toss it over to you here, Epic, in just a second. But I want to remind you about coming down and becoming a supporter down at Aftermath Media. There's plenty going on down there. Come on down. But I want to remind you about Rory Gallagher. And here he is playing A Million Miles Away. It's Aftermath FM. It's the middle of the night.
All around me, and my mood is really not a style. Right now the blues are to surround me, but I'll break out after a while. Well, I'm a million miles away. I'm a million miles away. Sailing like the driftwood on a windy bay. Yes, I'm a million miles away. I'm a million miles away. Sailing like the driftwood on a windy bay. Stop back, I have my eyes shut. Was dreaming about the past. I thought about you while the radio played. You surely got moving. It's the reason I stayed. I started drifting to a different place. I realized I was falling off the face of your world. And there was nothing left to bring me back. I'm a million miles away. A million miles away. I'm just a million miles away. And there's nothing left to bring me back today. Took a ride, went downtown. Streets are empty, there was no
Hey, 202. What's happening? Thanks for calling.
How you guys doing?
We're doing good. So, did you hear what we've been talking about tonight? So, we talked about the NATO Strategic Command taking over a base on American soil, getting full operational capability. We talked about the Strong Cities Network, and then under them, the fusion centers. And we found a sort of a lucky throw of the dice. We found some interesting correlations to the Strong City Network and publicized events that had a negative reflection on gun ownership in America and crazy terrorists running wild all over the country trying to kill us. And so, we see the infrastructure for the North American Union type, FEMA regions. What do you think about all that?
I think it's the new melting pot of America that they want. I worked with NATO when I was in Europe, and I worked in a Cold War era type of fusion center back in the day in the 80s and 90s, but not at the level of the stuff that they have everything intertwined at this point with today's current fusion centers. But one thing about the Safe Cities Network and just watching Loretta Lynch there at the end of Obama's administration, right as they were about to go out the door doing this presentation at the UN, one thing that she brought up about how great it was and how they were instituting it was that it was a way to help out all these failed American cities after the 2008 crash, problem, reaction, solution. They helped create these problems but these places that have lost their police forces, they were bringing in UN police from different areas of the world to start being the policing agencies and fill those gaps in those towns. That's just a nice little drip feed way of starting to get the UN into the U.S. this way, into these FEMA regions. You know, and if people just can't grasp the idea, I mean, it's enough to where we have issues in our own police departments where you have good cops trying to do what they're doing, and then dealing with the corrupt officials, the people who get those kind of jobs that just like the authoritarian aspect of it. But then you get a group of people in that are not even part of your culture whatsoever, that just come in, and the next thing you know, they're the ones who are pulling you over and dealing with community issues. That it's just a bad setup, but it's just that creep in by the UN, which is never a good thing, because they have nowhere on the planet have they come in as peacekeeping forces and done any nation any good. It's just a way for genocide and going in and taking resources.
Well, the thing is that a lot of people don't realize what is a constitutional free zone. And people don't realize how much of the country is in constitutional free zone. So, for example, 100 miles in of any border or coastline, a 50-mile ring around any international airport. So these are all zones where, realistically, the Constitution, we're under international law or UCC code in these zones. And realistically, I mean, the UN is somebody that could provide security for this type of a configuration, wouldn't you say?
Well, it definitely. I mean, and that's sort of like the mandate for it, and how it's. I mean, for the layperson, people don't even pay attention to that kind of stuff, and how, as a nation, and allegedly supposed to be a constitutional republic, the way things are set up, how they just kind of skirt these issues, and we've all seen those videos where people are within those 100-mile border areas dealing with American police forces at that point, or border control, whoever it is in that region. I mean, I'm legally, speaking of that, in that type of region, because I'm definitely within 100 miles of the Canadian border on the north side. Mm-hmm. So that kind of stuff would apply the same way. It's just, luckily, this little area right here is different. At least it's fortified with people that live in this area that don't want to be a part of something like that. So it's an area where there is, most of the LAPD, when they retired, they moved up here because they like this area, and it's a constitutional type area, a prepper area. Of course, there are a lot of wealthy people that moved in recently, which will kind of mess up some of the stuff. But people don't understand these different regions and how this kind of stuff doesn't apply, and that we're the way the country is, and the way that, like what you guys are bringing up, that nobody's really paying attention to, about how things changed last year, and these subtle little hints with FEMA coming in. And when I worked in D.C., our largest client for this engineering firm was FEMA, and I remember working on a report when it was, at that point, just breaking it up into 5 larger FEMA regions at that point. And of course, the stuff breaks down even further into the 10. But people do not understand the power of that shadow government. And it's not so much the people in the actual organization, FEMA itself. That's the mechanism that the people above them that are using that as the wedge issue, the mechanism to control the stuff that's going on as far as how the shadow government takes over in this type of crisis. And the fact that the 50 governors did what they did, they're just not paying attention, because they're dealing with daily life, and they're being divided right now with this. No matter what subject it is, I don't think you can find anything that is not a 50-50 fight, division, Hatfield, McCoy type of fight where there's somebody that's literally on one side or the other and even down the line. And that's what they want, because they need to get us into some kind of civil conflict to where something really bad, where once arms start coming into the mix and people are fighting that way, that will give the UN the justification on their side to come in and start mitigating with their peacekeepers.
And these kind of insurrection dialogues and these accusations of white supremacists and all this. But I want to recall, if you would, for a moment, to remember back and think. Do you remember there was a specific dynamic that happened during the tail end of the Trump presidency, in the middle of what was going on, where he said specifically, and directly, I've enjoyed being your president.
Yeah.
And he also
where he was,
okay,
from the ship to supposedly the medical center. Yeah, because it was a wardroom, it was a stateroom in the background.
He also said at one point around, and this what he said this around was pharmaceutical stuff. And he said, I might be disappearing for a while because I have some enemies in high places. And he was saying it around something that happened about people being able to buy their drugs in Canada. And he was saying, I'm going to not be around for a while. Do you guys remember that, both of you? And come on in here, Epic Jeremy, because I think Pompeo had something to do with that the head of FEMA when Trump was in office. Go ahead. What do you guys remember this now, what I'm saying now? First of all,
I remember the whole thing. We broke down the really bad imagery they had. It was obviously computer generated because you had the mirrored images from the reflective table and stuff in the paper he had. He had a notepad. Right, and you could see that wasn't legit.
There were some discrepancies with what was behind him, and it was clear he was on a ship, an ocean ship. He was not in wherever he said he was, or I forget what it was, man. It was a whole bunch of shit around it, but it doesn't even matter. The point is that 202 remembers him saying, "I've enjoyed being your president," like past tense. And then
and after he came back, all of a sudden he was this different person, and then he was just fully on board with the program.
Exactly.
Like he finally he was shown his own take on the Zapruder film from a different angle.
Either that
Bill Hicks used to say.
Either that, or let's just say from a protocol perspective. If there was danger like what's been said that around this COVID thing, that kind of danger, first of all, would you ever see the president and the vice president in the same room at the same time? Ever?
Hell no.
No. What did we see
Especially
the whole time?
not on a plane.
Especially the whole time during the whole time during this. Who's sitting there? Pence and Trump. Okay, now that's number one. Number two, if that was going on, wouldn't you take your president immediately down into, whatever mountain under whatever, and they're squirreled away? You roll out your second dummy. You roll out your lookalike. Because that would explain and give a reason why there was a Trump and a Pence in the same room, because one of those two wasn't the real dude. And I'm suggesting that the bullet man, the target, was the guy. And he came out looking young, this and that. He had energy. What did you think about that? 202.
I watched something recently about that on doubles, and we've used them at so many different times. So many other people do. We know that Hitler did, Saddam did. There are so many other dictators and presidents and other people around the world, and even famous celebrities. And wouldn't be surprised if that really seemed like a double that time with Hillary. I think on September 11th when she collapsed, and next thing you know, she's coming out of that other building in Manhattan, and and you're like, something's way off about that. She lost a lot of weight.
Wouldn't it explain somebody that you think you know coming out and saying a bunch of stuff that you would never hear them say? That all of a sudden they're following a whole storyline and script that you would never in a million years have thought they would go that way, but all of a sudden they just do. It's kind of
was that a character for Trump?
Exactly.
You know that for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is not. Trump is just not the way. His ego's too strong. For him to follow something like that.
That's what I'm saying. So, hey man, there's something weird, and and I'll just say, I haven't gotten into any of this. I haven't gotten into any, political stuff as far as candidates are getting on and beating on Joe Biden, because there's plenty to beat on him about. But I just want to point out that there is some really weird activities around the whole insurrection and the fence that went up and just the whole White House and just the whole look of it all to me. The look of it all to me seems facade-ish. In other words, he's not in the position he's being presented as, that there is some other entity, whether it be FEMA, that's in control, or there's been some transitional control passed over to a different entity based on some proposed threat in America on some, you see what I mean? Some case that's been built in the background.
It's the aliens.
Well, it gives credence to the whole Ingersoll Lockwood books, The Last President, to where it's that one point where he just kind of faded into the background. Next thing you know, he comes back, and it seems like FEMA's in control. And if they're in control, they're not going to relinquish power, and which means Biden is not really in the position that he is in. So, maybe he was our last president, and now we're under this other regime, the shadow government that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I was talking about today online, just because I'm heavily into the 9/11 side, just for work stuff that I do. And one thing that I noticed is how I think Esquire magazine came out last summer, and just out of nowhere, just decided to do an attack piece on loose change, and their film, and creating the 9/11 movement, and researchers, and how, because that wasn't dealt with at the time, that they're the ones who created this Q phenomenon. And by creating this Q phenomenon, they're the ones who literally pushed this into this domestic terrorism aspect that they're dealing with on the 6th. So they're trying to swoop in and take everything that went on in the last 2 decades with the 9/11 movement, people questioning that, for this 20th anniversary, and now literally leapfrogging it, loose change, created Q, which is now our domestic terrorism problem, which ties into this aspect of how the policing forces, and like the piece that you played earlier, are talking about domestic terrorism being mostly Americans. And the one thing that guy left out in that panel, talking to all those other people, is that all of those people arrested during that time, since 9/11, they were all created by the FBI. There's still not been one incident of one group of people that have not been co-opted and created by the FBI since 9/11 as an actual terrorist group. They're just finding all these patsies and homeless people and people with mental illnesses to fill a role, to do an action so that they can say we stopped a terrorist act. So again, it's more problem, reaction, solution.
Well, Rumsfeld told us it was going to happen. He said so.
When I found
on September 10th, right?
What I found
he said
really
missing trillions.
Hang on a second, and then say that again, because I don't want to miss that. But they made a point of calling these guys that they've arrested Americans, but they made a point of not saying whether or not they were Muslim, which I found to be interesting, because when they say Americans, it applies to both Muslim Americans and white supremacists. So the thing is even though he wasn't saying Muslims then, because right then was when I played that was from 2011. Okay, so at the time, the big enemy then was the Muslims or whatever. So, but see, he said Americans specifically, not to be inclusive with the religious connotations of it. But it's funny how it applies to both, and you could play it now, and it sounds like exactly what we're going through here with the idea of this being the number one threat by listed by the Department of Homeland Security is white supremacists, Christian gun owners who want the Constitution, who play roll the Gadsden flag and like that. Epic Journeyman, we only got a few minutes left. Jump in here, man.
Well, just a couple seconds. Yeah, well, the loose change connection, the thing was Rumsfeld. It was a pivotal thing and all that, because on September 10th, 2001, he mentions they can't find the missing trillions in the military audit. Trillions with a T, right? And the records for that, coincidentally, is they're in the Solomon Brothers building in Building 7. The building that collapses when no plane hits it. The one that looks like it got demolished on purpose. The one that the British BBC news anchor was saying it had already collapsed when it's right there in the background behind her. Still up, right? So
James Langely.
Solomon's Temple. All right, we'll be back tomorrow night. Thanks for calling, 202. Appreciate that, man. Interesting conversation. We'll be back tomorrow night. Send the microcosm. Say goodnight, Epic Journeyman. We're out of here. Hey, here's the ups. Here's the ups and downs. Living kind. It's a ghost town, man. It's a ghost town. All right, well, time's come, man. It's over. We're off the air. And now we're only over here on YouTube with all our buddies and our friends. So, if you're still there, who's your daddy? Thanks for calling. 202, thanks for calling. And,
my pleasure, brother.
Yeah.
Glad you could bring me on.
Yeah. So food for thought, yeah. Yeah. So food for thought. And we'll be back tomorrow. And Chad, I'll send you an email tomorrow. And I'll let you guys know. I'm going to have a whole presentation by Friday that I'm not going to put public, but I'll share it with you guys so you can go look at what I'm talking about building this thing. Because I'm super stoked on it. And I got a whole bunch of people that are already stoked. So I want you to be stoked too. So we'll help you out and show you what we got going on. So Scott, I'll see you later, man. You guys have a good night. I gotta go get something to eat. I got some cold pizza in there and some macaroni and chopped meat.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you guys. All right. It's a wrap. We'll see you guys later.